Hey there guys, Portal Master here, and in today's video we are going to be wrapping up what was originally intended to be the 8 or 9 part brief history of Skylanders series. When I announced this series, it was a very different time in the world and in the Skylanders community. I announced it well over a year ago, and the original intention was just to be a short series that talked all about the Skylanders games and then talked about what could have been in the Skylanders 7. It was also going to talk about like Spyro's Kingdom, and then I was going to do this video as like a comment response and like corrections video to anything I might have gotten wrong along the way. Well, obviously now we have all these rumors, and I'd already been thinking about extending the series when I was originally doing it well over a year ago, and we're going to get a little bit into that once we get towards the end of this video. So let's get started and let's start doing a little bit of a comment response and just issue a few corrections to the things that I've said throughout the series. Let's jump in. The first comment I wanted to respond to was back from the Skylanders Giants era, where someone asked, why is it that Giants is the only game to have levels that were also playable in Spyro's Adventure? And of course they would be referring to the adventure packs. They'd be referring to Pirate Seas, Darklight Crypt, Empire of Ice, and Dragon's Peak. So why was this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The main reason that they didn't bring forward the adventure packs, the previous adventure packs, into Swap Force was because of the jump button. When they added jumping in Swap Force, they knew that that would break the original 2 levels, or the original 2 games levels, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So that's why you never saw any of the older level adventure packs being brought forward after Swap Force. The other reason, though, that I think that these levels were playable in both Spyro's Adventure and Giants is because they're the only games that had identical assets. While Swap Force through Imaginators did run on the same engine, they did not have the same assets, and they used different graphical styles every time as a result of flip-flopping between Vicarious Visions and Toys for Bob. So it would have been really hard to have reused assets over and over and over again, and that's, I think, why you see what ended up happening with Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions bouncing things back and forth. That's why adventure packs never carried forward in future games. Piggybacking on that topic, I actually wanted to talk about something that Jap28 said on this video when it came out. He says, I actually got out of Skylanders when Giants came out. It was too similar, I thought. Eventually Trap Team got me back in, and I never looked back. This is basically my complaint with Giants, and throughout the brief history of Skylanders video series, one thing that I especially noticed was just how similar these two games were. I already knew they were similar, but this series really kind of brought to light how similar those two games were. Every other game, I feel like I was saying, they changed this, they changed that, but Giants and Spyro's Adventure fundamentally are the two most similar games across the franchise, and I just wanted to highlight that for a second. I can't find the original source of where this comment comes from, but I did want to point out this comment. So someone pointed out on my Giants video that essentially Giants was not developed in under a year. And that is partially true, and that's partially untrue. I had said in my Skylanders Giants video that, it was developed in under a year, but I don't think people were exactly very clear on what I meant when I said that. So let me clarify. When Spyro's Adventure was being created, and actually before so back during the era of Spyro's Kingdom, as they were transitioning into Skylanders, the ideas for the first 3 games had already been developed. They already knew that they wanted to do Spyro's Adventure. They already had an idea for Giants, and they already had an idea for some type of game that would involve swapping parts, shifting shapes, something along those lines. Therefore, you have Skylanders Swap Force planned out before Spyro's Adventure even came out. However, we know for a fact that Swap Force was not planned in its final form when the game was originally under development. It was originally supposed to be Skylanders Shapeshifters or something along those lines, and somewhere along the way it changed into what we currently now know as Swap Force. So, I claimed that Giants was developed in under a year, and I do still mean that. Essentially, Giants was not being actively developed until after Spyro's Adventure had come out. It was actually, planned out well in advance. They already had ideas for the Giants, but there was not active development going on. They may have even created some of the Giants at that point. They may have even put them into the original game just to see how they would work. But fundamentally, the story, the characters, etc. When I say characters, I mean the NPC characters. So much of that was not made when Spyro's Adventure had come out, and essentially most of Giants was developed in under a year. However, Swap Force was not developed in under a year. It was developed in more like 2 or maybe closer to 1.5, as Swap Force was still being developed by Vicarious Visions at this time, and I'm pretty sure Toys for Bob is the team that mostly took the reins in the Giants era, and they already knew that the third game was going to be Vicarious Visions' project. So essentially, Giants is the Skylanders game with the least amount of development time. That is still true, despite the fact that it was planned out well before Spyro's Adventure even released. On my Skylanders Swap Force video, Master of Pasta Guy pointed out that the graphics on the Wii version for Swap Force were absolutely terrible, and I wanted to take another minute to talk about that. I talk in this series a lot about what I think may have caused the downfall of Skylanders, but one thing that I never talked much about was how awful the graphics were on the Wii editions for both Swap Force and for Trap Team. Now, if you've watched my Skylanders sales video, you might know that, well, the Wii took up an increasingly smaller share of the user base after every subsequent game. And honestly, I think part of that could have been the graphics. The graphics looked really, really bad on Swap Force. The graphics looked even worse on Trap Team, and I think that this turned off certain people from buying the next game. This isn't proven, but it is something I never addressed in this series, and I did think I should just share right here. MagmarkCO Gaming said on the Swap Force video as well that there's actually a quote-unquote loophole in the Swap Force elemental gates, the dual elemental gates, where you can use 2 characters to actually unlock them. And that is partially true, although I would never call it a loophole. You could use, in fact, 2 Skylanders of different elements to unlock those gates, but that doesn't change the fact that you still needed more, characters to unlock the gates, essentially. So it was more expensive, obviously, if you used the Swap Force characters, and I don't even know, the fact that it was even posted as a loophole makes me wonder how many kids that were, only children, or, say there was, one guy, and all you had were sisters or something like that didn't play Skylanders. That probably sounds sexist, but it's just an example. Essentially, you're the only kid in your house who played Skylanders. You didn't know that that was the way it worked. So I still stand by, everything I said about the dual elemental gates and Swap Force, but I would figure I would address that in this video. The GameShark642 points out that the Trap Team portal is the only portal to be compatible with every single game. I didn't actually know that. I kind of assumed that Superchargers portal was, and I don't know if that's true. Maybe someone can fact check that. Moving on. This is one of the things that really warranted making this a corrections video. Inklander3 says, while I agree that the excessive number of figures and costs definitely turned a lot of people away from Trap Team, some of the information at the beginning of this video is wrong. Firstly, every Skylanders game was co-developed in some way between Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions. It's been stated in multiple interviews that Toys for Bob had to sign off on character designs from Vicarious Vision games and vice versa. There was never a game where Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions were the exclusive developers. Yes, one of them took the lead each year, but the process was still collaborative. This is why Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions are co-credited in the credits of all the games, including Trap Team. Secondly, and more importantly to note, every game from Swap Force going forward was developed using Vicarious Visions' engine, Alchemy. The reason why Trap Team seems to have such a graphical downgrade is not due to Toys for Bob changing engines or not modding Alchemy. It is just because Toys for Bob is not known to be as good at creating textures and 3D models as Vicarious Visions. This is why Trap Team and Imaginators just don't look as good as Swap Force and Superchargers despite running on the same engine. Just figured I would clarify these aspects since I know that Alchemy was in fact used for all the games but the first 2, and I know that VV and TFB do work together quite often. I don't really have anything else I need to say for this other than I'm assuming this is true. I didn't bother fact-checking this, and I am taking this person at their word for it. This was news to me, and I figured I should share it with you guys because it is a correction that needs to be made about some stuff I said in the Trap Team video. So there you go. For Superchargers, I actually made several incorrect things when I was talking about the pricing. For instance, first, the Chaos Trophy on its own was $8. Secondly, the racing packs were $35. And thirdly, when I was talking about how rare various figures were from Superchargers, the main one I talked about was Thrillipede and said there weren't really huge issues with other figures and their distribution. That is false because the Land Racing Pack was actually incredibly hard to get, which included Double Dare Trigger Happy and his vehicle Gold Rusher. So I kind of neglected that an entire racing pack was difficult to find. So I apologize for that. Super Syrupy Waffles 2 says, why did everyone want these games for the Wii? I could understand Spyro's Adventure and Giants, but Trap Team and Superchargers? The graphics for these games on the Wii made a trash can look appealing. This is another one I wanted to talk about, and I talk a little bit about this in my sales video I recently posted. But essentially, the reason why so many people stuck with the Wii was just because that is the only console they owned. I think a lot of us gamers tend to not realize just how massive the Wii was. Essentially, while I own a PlayStation 4, and I just kind of expect most gamers to own a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, we don't remember that the Wii had such a massive casual appeal. The Wii sold to everybody. People that I know that don't own other consoles own the Wii. The Wii just had such massive appeal. Almost everyone I know owned one when they were a kid. Their family had one. And that goes for guys and girls. Like, almost everybody I know has one. And the same cannot be said for PlayStations. It is not known as a family console. And the Wii was one of the last family consoles that we've seen besides the Switch, which is now kind of trying to take its place. So, with the Wii having so much appeal and so many houses having a Wii in them, but not other consoles, that's why so many people stuck with the Wii, and that's why there was such a reliable install base that was always on the Wii. Moving on to Imaginators, I wanted to respond to this thing that Judas Answer said. Great that you mentioned the soundtrack. It's a big problem for me that Balf didn't return, and if the rumors are true, hashtag bring back Balf. Also, Hans Zimmer only made the main theme of the first game. Balf made the rest of the stuff for SSA, as well as the rest of the games, excluding Imaginators. That's a correction I need to issue. Epic Phantom XD says 2 things to fact check with this video. The American Imaginators portal was gray, and the Swap Force portal was black. I never noticed they were different colors. The second thing he says is that Spyro's Adventure definitely had the shortest levels. The Trap Team levels were shorter than Imaginators, and essentially he kept on saying stuff, but essentially the takeaway from his comment is Spyro's Adventure had the shortest level, Trap Team had the second shortest level. Now, I'm not going to go in and I'm not going to try and fact check this by recording all of the levels and trying to see what comes out shorter, but having not played Trap Team in a while and having played Spyro's Adventure more recently, I'm going to take him at his word for this and let you draw your own conclusions. Paul Tidd said something that I agree with. He said, the biggest mistake they made with the Switch version of Imaginators was not having a digital version to buy on the eShop. Since the game doesn't have a portal on the Switch, they could have easily made more sales on the Switch version by having a digital Portal Owners Pack. This isn't a correction, this is something I agree with. And it would have been really, I think, it would have made a lot of sense. I mean, honestly, the figures were still easy to get at that point. It wouldn't have been like Starlink going the half digital, half physical route. I think this would have been incredibly intelligent, and I hope that if the rumors are true and they are bringing back Skylanders, they do re-release Imaginators digitally. There is no excuse for them to not do it, and honestly, I really hope they do it someday. Even, they could release it now and just do all digital figures. Like, I don't understand why they haven't done that, honestly. So, there you go. Now, on to the previous video that I made about Skylanders 7 and what could have been. I apologize for getting this major detail wrong in that video. However, in my defense, I never really got into Disney Infinity that much. But, Nolan the Epic Portal Master says, this is wrong at 420. There were plans for a Disney Infinity 4.0. The idea was after doing yearly games for 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, they would take a year off rather than just jumping into 4.0 in 2016, and they would update 3.0 for at least a year until 4.0 was ready. 4.0 was being made to be a game that was built to be added on, so they would do that for a while. Some ex-Disney Infinity games said that a 5.0 might have even been a thing in the long future, and it would have been after 4.0 ran its lifespan. Essentially, what Infinity wanted to do was biannual installments, or an installment every other year. So you would have seen 4.0 coming out 2 years after 3.0, and 5.0 probably coming out another 2 years afterwards. This is contrary to what I said, where their goal was for 3.0 to be the last game, so I apologize for getting this detail wrong. Hopefully in the future, I'll have some time to really sit down and research the other Toys to Life games and stuff, and be able to make interesting, informative videos from a Skylanders fan perspective on these, which we'll get into in a moment. The last thing that I want to talk about is something that Davis Harper said, but it's an important detail that I kind of failed to mention. I do think something was originally planned after Robo and Wildstorm were released, because the Imaginator story left on a massive cliffhanger, where Eon didn't even say, well done, Portal Master, thanks to you, Chaos's Doomlanders are gone and Skylanders is saved, or something like that. Instead, the brain said, come closer and let me tell you a tale, and it ends there. Not even the end credits roll. Especially looking at how short the main story is with only 10 levels, I do think there was more more to come, potentially talking about the Ancients. Of course, new senseis and battle classes would have been added, but there was probably some type of DLC that was planned. I think Imaginators might be the game I've played the least of all, and it's definitely the game I've only beaten, I actually technically have beaten it twice because I did beat it on the Wii U and then I did beat it on the Switch, but I'm pretty sure when I beat it on the Switch, I was not paying attention to the story at all, and I was just trying to play it so that I could basically talk about it in a video. So I really didn't pay attention to it because Imaginators is not really my favorite Skylanders game. So I failed to mention that, and I do apologize, but it is a good point. They did kind of leave Imaginators open, and it adds to the fact that the game just kind of straight up feels incomplete to me. So I just thought, again, that was worth mentioning. So that is it for the comments that I needed to respond to. So that is pretty much all the corrections that I needed to make. I have, really enjoyed making this series. This has been one of my favorite series that I've ever done on this channel, even though it took me so very long to do it. It's one of the ones that I've spent a lot of time researching and a lot of time thinking up. For a lot of my videos, I don't do any type of script, but I do write a bulleted list for every single one of these videos, which is probably the most scripting that I really am ever going to do with a lot of these videos. So you can just see from that how much I truly enjoy making videos on the brief history of Skylanders. And with that being said, I do intend to extend this series out into the future, but not without taking a slight detour first. I really enjoyed this series, and as I said, I want to learn more about the other Toys to Life games, and I think that you guys might be interested in that type of stuff as well. As a Skylanders fan, I never got into Disney Infinity. I never got really into LEGO Dimensions, but I've always wanted to learn more. And so I am going to do a series called A Brief History of Toys to Life, where I am going to explore all of the other flagship Toys to Life games. And I'm going to be doing so from a very analytical standpoint, from less of a Skylanders nostalgia standpoint and more of a, this is what this game was from the outside kind of look into it. And they'll probably be a lot shorter than the Brief History of Skylanders videos. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. That is going to be the next large series that is coming to this channel, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. I'll have a separate announcement coming soon where I'll lay out the exact upload schedule for that video series. So hope you guys are excited for that. However, after we get done with that, I want to come back to the Brief History of Skylanders series, and I want to talk more about some of the other properties within the Skylanders franchise, be it the various mobile games that came out. So we've got to talk about Lost Islands, we've got to talk about Cloud Patrol, we've got to talk about Battlecast, we've got to talk about Ring of Heroes, we've got to talk about so many different things. I want to talk about all of the 3DS games. I need to get Skylanders Trap Team on the 3DS, and then I'm probably going to replay all the Skylanders 3DS games just so that I can talk about them. So that's another thing that's going to come to that. I also want to talk all about the various seasons of Skylanders Academy. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I think I've gotten up to 16 videos planned for a brief history of Skylanders once we're done with a brief history of Toys to Life. So this series will be coming back in the near future, but hopefully you guys will stay tuned through the Toys to Life series. And then once we're done with that, I have some more ideas for more Skylanders in-depth discussion videos that we can talk about in the future, and I hope you'll stick around for that. So this is just the beginning. I plan to keep this channel coming with loads of original Skylanders content, and I hope that you will stick around for however many weeks it takes to get through all this stuff. Thank you again for staying tuned for this series. Again, I've just so enjoyed this. You guys are absolutely amazing. These videos have done so well. Thanks again for watching. This has been Portal Master. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Go check me out on social media, link down in the description. And if you want, you can join the Discord, which is also down there for you guys. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching. I just wanted to take some time to thank my generous patrons on Patreon, including APYT Skylanders, Haley, Cinderclash, Adrian, OctoBoom, True Blue Dogemon, and HypnoticOcelot.